Sissy Wedding Transformation. Trapped as the Bride. Sissy Institute Stories, Part 1.
I held the envelope like it might change its mind if I stared long enough. Cream card, silver edging, a faint blush of rose print flourishes in the corners. So perfectly them, it almost stung. I slid the invitation out again, smoothing it flat on my kitchen table as if I hadn't read it 100 times already.
You are cordially invited to the wedding of Rose Bennett and Jacob Clark. Saturday, 21st June. The Westmere Grand Hotel. Ceremony at 1 p.m. Reception to follow in the ballroom. Dress code. Formal. RSVP. Already ticked. Already sealed. Already sent.
Jacob Clark, my best friend since primary school. The boy who could fix anything and laugh off the rest. And Rose. Rose, who never drifted into a room so much as arranged it around her. Elegant by accident and devastating on purpose. I told myself I was happy for them. I told myself I'd been happy for them for months, but a person can only rehearse the same line for so long before the edges fray. I read the names again, letting each letter weigh more than it should. Jacob, Rose. The pair of them looked regal on paper, like they belonged to some other world where everything matched and nothing cracked. I remembered the night Jacob called me, breathless, grinning. She said, "Yes, mate," and I'd matched his laugh note for note, holding the phone too tight, hoping my voice didn't shake. I had meant it. I do mean it. It's just that meaning something and feeling it aren't always the same thing. My suit hung from the wardrobe door, pressed and patient. Cufflinks lined up like obedient soldiers, shoes buffed to their best attempt at charm. I packed methodically. Shirt, spare shirt, because nerves sweat. Tie in pearl gray silk, pocket square. The aftershave I only ever wear when I want to feel like a better version of myself. The overnight bag swallowed each item without comment. I checked the invitation again. Time, address, parking arrangements. The Westmere Grand. Beige stone, sweeping steps. A lobby that smells like money and lemon polish. I'd Googled it the night the save the date arrived. Traced my finger along the photos of the ballroom. Chandeliers like captured constellations. A marble aisle that looked made for promises. Don't be ridiculous, I told the card, because there was no one else to tell. You're going to show up, clap at the right moments, drink politely, and mean most of the congratulations. I slipped the invitation back into its envelope, tucked it into my inside pocket. It felt like a passport and a verdict at the same time. My phone buzzed. A group chat photo lit the screen. Andrea had posted a picture from the rehearsal dinner. She's one of Rose's bridesmaids. We'd met a few times at gatherings where I hovered at the edge of conversations, laughing half a second too late. In the photo, Rose stood between her bridesmaids, all champagne satin and easy joy, her hand resting lightly on Jacob's chest. Andrea captioned it,
"Final check's done. See you all tomorrow at Westmere."
"Tomorrow." Right. The bag zip purred shut. I took one last walk through the flat. Window latched, hobnobs off. Plants watered like they would miss me. The mirror by the door offered my reflection back with a gentleness I didn't deserve. I practiced a smile that said content instead of practice. It would do. Keys, wallet, phone, invitation. I locked up and headed for the car. The sky had that settled blue of a day that has already found its rhythm, and for a second, I let myself believe I could find mine too. It's just a wedding, Liam. People get married all the time. People you love get married to other people all the time. You show up, you clap, you survive. You don't say the wrong thing. You don't think the wrong thing. You definitely don't imagine anything else. The engine turned over. The sat nav offered the route like a mercy. As I pulled away, the invitation pressed warm against my chest. Westmere Grand, 1 p.m. Rose and Jacob. A simple fact, like weather. Unavoidable, like weather. I drove toward it anyway. The motorway stretched out ahead, but my mind stayed behind at the flat. Every item I'd folded into the overnight bag seemed to carry a piece of my nerves with it. The shoes were heavy with expectation. The tie, pearl gray, chosen to be respectable but not memorable, felt like a costume in waiting. I kept glancing at the invitation in the passenger seat as if it might correct me. Yes, Liam, it's real. Yes, they're really marrying. No, it's not you. Jacob had always been the one people leaned toward in a room, quick with a joke, quicker with a hand on your shoulder, the kind of man who never second-guessed himself. Rose saw that straight away. She'd looked at him once across a crowded pub, and I swear the air tilted in her direction. I'd been right there, pint glass sweating in my hand, watching it happen. The sat-nav droned on about junctions and exits, but my thoughts tangled tighter. What would it be like, standing there in that ballroom tomorrow, watching Jacob wait at the altar, watching Rose walk toward him in lace and light? The thought twisted sharp and sweet, like pressing on a bruise. I shook my head hard, forcing my attention back to the road. "Stop it," I muttered. "You're the best man in spirit, if not in title. You're supposed to clap, not collapse." My phone buzzed on the dashboard. Another photo from the bridal party chat. Andrea again. She'd snapped Rose trying on a final makeup look. Luminous skin, soft curls pinned at the sides, lips in a pink so natural it made me ache.
Andrea's caption tomorrow, she's going to be the most beautiful bride.
I wanted to throw the phone out the window, but instead I just turned the screen face down and tightened my grip on the wheel. The Westmere Grand loomed on the horizon an hour later, its towers like stone sentinels against the summer sky. Sunlight flared on the windows, making them flash like eyes. The place looked expensive, timeless, and entirely uninterested in my private battles. I slowed at the gates, heart kicking like it had been caught out. This wasn't just Jacob's wedding. This was the moment I'd have to prove to everyone and to myself that I could stand quietly in the background while the girl I'd wanted most in the world promised forever to somebody else. I pulled into the car park, cut the engine, and sat in the silence that followed. For a long minute, I didn't move. The invitation burned in my pocket. The bag waited in the back seat. The hotel rose above me, patient and immovable. "Right," I whispered. "Smile, shake hands, drink champagne, mean it." I opened the door and stepped out, shoes crunching against gravel. The air smelled faintly of roses. Of course it did. The Westmere Grand's doors were heavy oak, polished so bright they caught the sun in their grain. My reflection bent and blurred as I pulled one open, stepping into cool air and the hush of money well spent. The lobby stretched wide, marble floors veined in gold, chandeliers sparkling like frozen fireworks, staff moving with a smooth precision of people trained never to fumble. I adjusted my grip on the overnight bag, trying to look as though I belonged here. The smell was a mixture of lemon polish, lilies in tall vases, and something subtler, perfume maybe, or the crisp starch of starched uniforms. A piano rested at one side of the lobby, its lid gleaming, as though it might start playing by itself if you stared too long. Behind the reception desk stood a young woman in a navy blazer, her name tag polished as carefully as the brass bell beside her. She looked up with the same warm neutrality she'd offer to anyone who checked in, royalty, rock star, or me.
Good afternoon, sir. Welcome to the Westmere Grand. Do you have a reservation with us?
Yes, Clark Wedding, I said. My voice cracked slightly on Jacob's surname. I cleared my throat. Liam Hart. Her fingers danced across the keyboard.
Yes, Mr. Hart. We have you with us for 2 nights, deluxe double, breakfast included. She slid a keycard into a cream and gold sleeve and passed it across the counter. Room 217, second floor. Take the lift just behind you.
I nodded, pocketing the card like it was evidence I hadn't been turned away. She leaned forward slightly, conspiratorial but professional.
The rest of the wedding party is already arriving. You'll find the bar lively this evening.
I thanked her, forced a smile, and turned toward the lifts. The marble floor clicked under my shoes, every step loud in my ears. The air felt heavier here, as though the walls were lined with expectation. The lift doors slid open with a muted chime. I stepped inside, pressed 2, and watched the lobby shrink behind me. My reflection stared back from the mirrored panel, tie a little crooked, eyes too bright, jaw tight. For a moment, I didn't look like a guest. I looked like an intruder rehearsing his excuse. As the lift hummed upward, I imagined Rose sweeping into this same lobby tomorrow, veil floating like a promise, every head turning. I pressed the keycard harder into my palm. It wasn't fair that Jacob got to stand there waiting for her. It wasn't fair that I was just another name on the guest list. The lift dinged, and the doors opened to a hushed corridor lined with thick carpet, muffling my footsteps. I set off toward room 217, invitation still burning in my pocket. Room 217 opened with a muted click, the door swinging inward to a hush that smelled faintly of lavender polish and fresh linen. The kind of silence that felt manufactured, as though the hotel had gone to war with dust and won. The room was wide, too wide for someone staying alone. A double bed stood against the far wall, its headboard upholstered in pale leather, pillows piled like clouds on parade. The curtains were drawn halfway, letting sunlight spill in across the carpet in golden squares. A writing desk waited near the window, stocked with hotel stationery, and a tall wardrobe loomed opposite the bed, its mirrored doors throwing my reflection back at me. I set my bag down by the desk and sat on the edge of the mattress. The springs yielded with dignified restraint, like everything else in this building, perfect, polite, and impersonal. I loosened my tie, running a hand through my hair, the silence pressing against me. This was the moment I usually enjoyed, arriving somewhere new, that thin shimmer of possibility before plans kicked in. But today it only magnified what was missing. Rose's laughter belonged in a room like this. Her perfume belonged in the air, not in the memories I dragged around like luggage. And tomorrow, she'd be waking up in her bridal suite across the hall or the floor above, wrapped in silk and certainty, preparing to walk toward Jacob. I let myself fall back onto the bed, staring at the ceiling. "What are you even doing here?" I muttered. "Showing up to clap for the man who stole the girl you've wanted for years?" The mirrored wardrobe caught my eye. My reflection looked back. Creased shirt from the drive, jaw tense, eyes shadowed. I hated how ordinary I looked in a place where everything else was extraordinary. And worse, I hated that tomorrow Rose would put on a dress so beautiful it would be remembered by strangers for years. And I'd be just another guest in a row of suits, applauding politely as she pledged herself to Jacob. My stomach tightened. The thought twisted, sharper than before. I sat up again, restless, pacing toward the wardrobe. My fingers hovered at the mirrored surface, as though it might open onto something else, something fairer. "Not fair," I whispered, the words fogging briefly against the glass. She should be marrying me. The knock on the wall from the room next door startled me back. Someone laughing, footsteps, voices passing in the hall. I stepped back quickly, ashamed of the heat crawling up my neck. But the thought stayed, growing roots in the quiet. If she can't walk down that aisle in her perfect dress, maybe she won't marry him at all. The idea arrived fully formed, like it had been waiting for me. My pulse quickened. My eyes strayed back to the wardrobe. And for the first time since I'd left home, a smile flickered at the edge of my mouth. The corridor swallowed me in soft carpet and quiet luxury, the kind that demanded you walk slower. Brass sconces glowed along the walls, spaced perfectly, each one mirrored in gilt frames that lined the way. My footsteps thudded gently, the sound absorbed into velvet and polish. Every door bore a neat brass number, identical, impersonal, yet heavy with stories I'd never hear. Behind one might be a bridesmaid laughing into her phone. Behind another, Rose herself, brushing her hair, rehearsing her vows. The thought sent a pang through my chest. I tried to focus on the hotel itself instead, the sort of place designed to impress you before you even realized you were impressed. A lounge opened off the main corridor, filled with low chairs in shades of cream and burgundy, soft light spilling across polished mahogany tables. Guests murmured over champagne flutes, their voices blending with the low hum of a string quartet tucked into the corner. The music felt carefully chosen, romantic but safe, celebratory but controlled. Beyond the lounge, I glimpsed the ballroom through wide double doors left ajar. Even unfinished, it glittered. White chairs lined up in regimented rows, ribbons of ivory tied neatly to each back. An arch of roses crowned the far end, petals waiting like witnesses. Chandeliers dangled above, each crystal catching and scattering the light into tiny rainbows across the marble floor. I stopped, hand resting against the doorframe, just looking. Tomorrow, Jacob would stand there in his suit, waiting. Rose would walk that aisle, every eye drawn to her, every step echoing toward forever. My throat tightened at the thought. I wasn't supposed to be jealous. It was his day, his happiness, but the sharp ache wouldn't leave. I swallowed it down, forcing myself to move on, to keep walking like I belonged here, like I wasn't some interloper rehearsing what-if fantasies in every shadow. A staff member passed by, balancing a tray of champagne glasses. She smiled politely, as though she'd read every thought written across my face and chosen not to comment. I nodded back stiffly, my cheeks warm. The lift at the far end gleamed with mirrored doors, waiting. My reflection flickered again as they slid shut around me, doubling, tripling, until I was surrounded by myself. It felt like standing trial in front of an audience of Liams, each one looking just as nervous, just as guilty. When the lift opened onto the second floor again, the quiet of the corridor seemed to press me back into myself. I walked quickly to room 217, slid the key card into the lock, and pushed the door closed behind me with more force than necessary. It was only when I leaned against the door, breathing out, that I realized. I wasn't just attending this wedding. I was standing at the edge of a life I thought could have been mine, and something in me wasn't willing to let it go so easily. Back in room 217, the air felt heavier, as though the ballroom's glitter had followed me inside and settled over everything. I dropped the key card onto the desk with a snap and paced across the carpet, too wired to sit still. I tried the television, flicked through channels, but every smiling face and canned laugh sounded false. I opened the minibar, cracked a small bottle of whiskey, and let the burn remind me I was still here, still stuck in this story that wasn't mine. From the window, The gardens glowed under fairy lights, a rehearsal dinner in full swing. Guests spilled across the terrace, clinking glasses, laughter carried on the warm night air, and at the center, Rose and Jacob. She wore a pale summer dress, her hair loose, her smile unguarded. He leaned close, whispering something that made her laugh harder. The sight made my chest ache so fiercely, I had to look away. I pressed my forehead against the cool glass, whispering through clenched teeth, "That should have been me." The thought grew sharper with each passing hour. The tuxedo I'd packed sat accusingly in the wardrobe. Tomorrow I'd stand among the other guests, clapping like a fool while Rose pledged her life to someone else. The injustice of it gnawed at me, restless and hungry. I sat at the desk, pulling out the invitation once again. I traced the embossed letters with my fingertip until my nail almost tore the paper. Rose Bennett and Jacob Clark. The names stared back at me like a sentence I couldn't escape. The scissors in the bathroom glinted when I went to wash my hands. Small, sharp, ordinary, but the sight sparked something in me. I imagined them sinking into satin, ripping across delicate lace, undoing the perfection Rose had planned. Without her dress, there could be no aisle, no vows, no kiss. Without her dress, maybe the whole wedding would crumble. The idea took root, dark but irresistible. My pulse quickened just thinking it. I poured another whiskey, then another. Each one only deepened the certainty blooming inside me. I'd do it. Tomorrow morning, before the ceremony, while Rose was still busy elsewhere, I'd slip into her suite and make sure that gown never saw daylight. I finally stretched out on the bed, shoes kicked aside, tie tugged loose. But sleep didn't come. My body lay heavy against the mattress, while my mind replayed the same image again and again. Rose walking down the aisle, radiant and untouchable, and me standing powerless in the crowd. The thought twisted into something sharper, me with scissors in hand, facing that glowing dress. And for the first time since arriving, I felt a smile pull at the corner of my mouth. Tomorrow, I thought. Tomorrow, it ends. The hours crawled. I lay on the bed fully dressed, jacket tossed aside, tie dangling loose against my chest. The room was too quiet, too still. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her, Rose, standing in the garden below, laughing under the fairy lights with Jacob at her side. Her smile had been so unguarded, so effortless, that it made my chest feel hollow. I turned onto my side, then onto my back again. The ceiling stared down like an accusation. The air smelled faintly of lavender from the hotel linen spray, but it did nothing to calm me. My heartbeat was too loud, like a drum in the silence. The whiskey hadn't helped either. If anything, it sharpened the edges of my thoughts. I replayed old memories until they warped. The first time Jacob introduced me to Rose, the way her hand had brushed mine when she passed me a glass, the summer evenings when I'd stayed late just to talk to her. I'd convinced myself for years it meant something, that it had to mean something. But tomorrow she'd be walking down that aisle to someone else, my best friend. I sat up, swung my legs over the side of the bed. The scissors lay on the desk where I'd left them, gleaming faintly under the lamp. I couldn't take my eyes off them. The thought I'd entertained earlier, ripping her gown to shreds, returned, stronger now, pulsing through me with every beat of my heart. If the dress was ruined, there could be no ceremony. If there was no ceremony, maybe she would hesitate. Maybe she would question everything. Maybe Jacob would falter. I pressed my palms into my face, whispering, "It's crazy, absolutely crazy." But when I pulled my hands away, My reflection in the wardrobe mirror stared back at me, and I didn't look horrified. I looked determined. I paced back and forth, until my legs ached. I poured the last of the whiskey, downed it in one swallow, and felt the warmth curl in my stomach. Then I sat at the desk again, dragging the invitation closer. Rose Bennett and Jacob Clark. I traced her name with my fingertip, then his, then hers again. My throat tightened. By the time the clock on the bedside table ticked past midnight, my mind was made up. I would do it. Tomorrow morning, before anyone else stirred, I would slip into Rose's suite and make sure that gown never touched her skin. The thought was terrifying, but for the first time all night, I felt calm. I slid under the covers at last, the scissors resting on the desk where I could see them even in the dim light. Sleep still wouldn't come easily, but when it did, my dreams were thick with lace and laughter, and the sound of Rose's name spoken like a vow. The alarm on my phone buzzed at 6, though I'd barely slept. My body felt heavy, leaden from too much whiskey and too little rest, but my mind was sharp, keyed in on one thing: today, the wedding day. I dressed quickly. Dark trousers, white shirt, jacket left hanging, so I wouldn't stand out too much in the corridor. The scissors felt absurd in my pocket, a small, ordinary thing that carried the weight of everything I intended to do. The hotel was still hushed at this hour. Staff moved quietly about the halls, arranging flowers, setting trays of champagne on silver stands. The scent of roses drifted everywhere, mingling with polish and coffee. I kept my head down, walking briskly but not rushing, rehearsing in my mind the lines I'd use if someone stopped me. I'm looking for the bar. I got turned around, but no one did. Rose's suite was at the far end of the corridor, marked with a polished brass number, 220. My stomach flipped as I approached. This was it. Behind that door hung the gown that would make her Jacob's bride. If I could tear it, ruin it beyond saving, maybe the day would collapse before it even began. I glanced around. Empty hallway. My pulse hammered in my ears as I slipped the borrowed master key card into the slot. Green light, a click. The handle turned easily under my hand. I stepped inside. The suite was brighter than mine, sun streaming through sheer curtains. A tray of untouched breakfast sat on the table, steam still rising from the coffee pot. The air smelled faintly of perfume. Hers. For a moment, I froze, certain she might appear from the bathroom, hair half done, lipstick in hand. But the suite was empty. And then I saw it. The wardrobe doors stood slightly ajar, and between them gleamed a spill of ivory satin. My throat went dry. I crossed the room, each step softer than the last, as though I were trespassing in a church. When I pulled the doors open, the dress glowed in the morning light. The gown shimmered with pearl buttons and lace, folds of silk spilling like water. Beside it hung the veil, weightless, delicate, whispering of vows and forever. I swallowed hard, reached into my pocket and pulled out the scissors. The metal flashed in the sunlight. My hand shook as I raised them, the blades hovering near the hem of the gown. "This is it," I whispered. My voice sounded strange in the silence. "This is how it ends." I reached forward. The fabric shifted. At first, I thought it was my imagination, nerves making the silk ripple. But then the lace trembled again, unmistakable, a slow stirring as though the gown were breathing. The veil fluttered though the air was still. The scissors slipped in my grip. And then, before I could move, the dress surged forward. The gown lunged forward, impossibly alive. I stumbled back, knocking against the desk, as the scissors slipped from my grasp and clattered to the carpet. My breath caught, the air sharp in my throat. The silk moved like water, folding and twisting with purpose, not chance. Sleeves stretched toward me like arms, lace cuffs curling as though they had hands. The veil lifted from its hanger, floating weightlessly into the air, drifting closer like a pale ghost. No, no, this isn't real, I gasped, pressing myself against the wall. My pulse thundered, my mind scrambling for logic, but there was none. The dress advanced anyway, skirts rustling like whispers, the scent of roses thickening around me. A length of satin ribbon whipped from the wardrobe, wrapping around my wrist. I yanked hard, but it tightened with unnatural strength, dragging me forward. Another ribbon lashed out, binding my other arm, pulling me toward the glowing folds of the gown. The fabric enveloped me, wrapping around my shoulders, brushing against my cheek. It was warm, too warm, alive with some hidden energy that sent a shiver racing down my spine. The more I struggled, the tighter it clung, lace snagging at my shirt, tearing the buttons loose one by one until they scattered to the floor. Stop, let me go. My voice cracked, but the gown paid no heed. The bodice twisted around, its pearl buttons gleaming like eyes. With an unnatural strength, it pressed against my chest, fabric sliding across my skin, searching, fastening, consuming. My trousers ripped at the seams as satin tendrils slithered down my legs, wrapping, squeezing, pulling. I kicked wildly, but the hem of the gown swept around my ankles, tangling, binding. In moments, I was trapped inside the folds of ivory silk, the world reduced to a blur of lace and light. The veil descended, brushing across my face, soft and suffocating. It clung to me, framing me, muffling my cries. When I inhaled, the scent of roses filled me so completely, it felt like I was breathing her in. Rose herself. My reflection flickered in the mirrored wardrobe doors. For a heartbeat, it was me, wide-eyed, panicked, shirt torn. Then the image rippled, and I saw something else. My jaw softening, my shoulders narrowing, my hair lengthening in pale waves. My body, trapped inside the gown, shifting beneath the satin's grip. No, I whispered, though my voice already sounded thinner, higher. Please, no. The dress didn't listen. The bodice tightened, cinching like a corset. The skirt swelled outward, layers of lace unfolding with a flourish. The veil settled firmly over my head, pins invisible but unyielding. Shoes slipped from the shadows of the wardrobe, ivory heels, that forced themselves onto my feet with a decisive snap of buckles. I stumbled forward, barely able to balance, the gown heavy, suffocating, yet perfect. And then the ribbons released me. I staggered toward the mirror. What stared back at me made my stomach twist with dread and awe all at once. My features were already changing, smoothing, softening. The gown fit me as though it had been made for me. My voice, when I tried to whisper again, trembled on the edge of roses. The gown's grip tightened, pulling me deeper into its folds. I clawed at the fabric, desperate to break free, but the satin only wound tighter, sliding over my skin with an eerie precision. My shirt split down the middle, the remnants falling uselessly to the floor. From the shadows of the wardrobe, more garments stirred. A pair of ivory stockings slithered free, their lace tops rippling like open mouths. They darted down my legs, wrapping tight around my calves, climbing higher with every second. I gasped as they clung snugly against my skin, sealing themselves in place with invisible garters. Next came the corset. Lavender satin, boned and shimmering, floated toward me like a predator. It wrapped around my torso with a snap, the ribbons tightening mercilessly. My breath hitched as the laces pulled tighter, narrower, narrower still, my waist cinching in, my ribs compressed until my posture lifted involuntarily. My silhouette was no longer mine. Petticoats followed, layer upon layer of lace and tulle unfurling beneath the skirt of the gown. They attached themselves in a flurry of fabric, rustling as they settled, forcing the dress to bloom outward into a perfect bell. I stumbled, catching myself on the edge of the wardrobe, my balance thrown by the sudden alien weight. The lingerie appeared last, ivory satin panties and a delicate lace bra. I tried to swat them away, panic clawing through me, but they dodged my hands like living things. The panties tugged themselves up my legs, snapping into place as though they had always belonged. The bra encircled my chest, straps tightening, cups pressing firmly against me. In the mirror, my chest swelled beneath the satin, soft curves where none had been before. A choker of pearls floated upward, fastening gently but firmly around my neck. Then earrings, a pair of delicate studs that pierced my ears without pain, embedding themselves as though they had always been there. Perfume drifted from the wardrobe shelf, the atomizer pressing itself with a sharp hiss. A mist enveloped me, settling onto my skin, into my hair. The scent was unmistakable. Rose's perfume, the one Jacob always said reminded him of summer nights. When I looked into the mirror again, my reflection was almost gone. My features blurred, softening into hers, my cheekbones higher, my lips fuller, my eyes widening with color that wasn't mine. My voice broke into a gasp, but it came out soft, lilting, too much like hers. The gown shuddered, as if in triumph. The veil floated higher, preparing to settle fully into place. And in that instant, I knew this was not just dressing me, it was remaking me. The room seemed to pulse with light. My breath came shallow, sharp, each inhale laced with the perfume still hanging in the air. I could feel the gown tightening, adjusting, perfecting itself around me, as though it were molding me like clay. The veil drifted down, slow and inevitable. It brushed across my forehead, settling into my hair, the combs and pins embedding themselves without touch. A faint weight pressed against my scalp, my hair no longer short and unruly, now poured down in long chestnut curls that spilled across my shoulders. I staggered closer to the mirror, every step muffled by the layers of silk and lace. My reflection was almost unrecognizable. My face, my jawline, my nose, all softening, reshaping. Cheekbones higher, lips fuller, eyes brighter, framed by lashes that had never been mine. For a split second, I could still glimpse Liam behind the glass, wide-eyed and panicked, but the shimmer overtook him, layer by layer, until Rose's face stared back at me. I touched my throat. My voice rasped out,
Stop! Please stop!
but the sound that came was not mine. It was hers. Soft, clear, unmistakably Rose. I clamped my hand over my mouth, horrified, but the echo of her tone still rang in my ears. The gown pulled me upright, spine straightening, shoulders tilting with bridal poise. I tried to resist, to hunch, to sag, but my body no longer obeyed. My waist was cinched narrow, my hips curved, the swell of a bosom pressing firmly against the lace bodice. I looked down in disbelief at the delicate hands that weren't mine, slender fingers tipped with pale manicured nails, adjusting the pearls at my throat as if by instinct.
No!
I whispered again, though it was Rose's lips forming the word.
I'm still me! I'm still Liam!
But the mirror mocked me. There was no Liam left. Only Rose, dressed in perfection. The full gown, the veil, the shoes, every detail immaculate. The room stilled, The gown released its final hold, content. The transformation was complete. I stumbled back from the mirror, my skirt brushing against the furniture, the train sweeping elegantly behind me. My chest heaved, panic clawing through me, but my reflection only smiled serenely, as though she were the happiest bride in the world. And deep inside, beneath the lace and satin, I felt it, an awful certainty. There would be no undoing this. I pressed my palms against the mirror as if I could push the reflection back, trade places with a man who should still be standing there. But there was no Liam left in the glass, only Rose. Her face, my face, stared back with wide, terrified eyes, lips trembling. The veil slipped softly as I moved, brushing against my cheeks. My chest rose and fell beneath the lace bodice, the swell of my bosom impossible to ignore. My waist narrowed beneath the unforgiving corset, hips spilling elegantly into the gown's full skirt. I tried to speak, to shout, to prove there was still a trace of me somewhere inside.
Stop this!
I cried. But the voice that rang out was not mine. It was soft, feminine, warm, the very voice I'd heard Rose use 100 times before. My stomach lurched. I tried again, quieter this time, hoping against hope.
Hello? It's me, Liam.
The sound shattered what was left of my denial. Rose's voice again, delicate and perfectly pitched, no matter the words. I clutched my throat, fingers tracing the smooth column of skin, the pearl choker warm against it. Tears pricked my eyes. I staggered back from the mirror, skirts sweeping across the floor, the train dragging heavily behind me. I stumbled into the chair by the dressing table, gripping the edge until my knuckles whitened. The perfume bottle still sat there, its mist hanging faintly in the air, as if mocking me. My reflection in the vanity was worse, smaller, closer. Rose's face staring back from inches away. The makeup was minimal, yet flawless. Just a trace of color at the lips, a hint of blush, lashes long and curled. I hadn't put it there, but the magic had. I tried again, whispering,
My name is Liam.
but the lips in the mirror shaped Rose's smile. The sound of distant footsteps in the corridor jolted me upright. My heart hammered. Someone was coming closer. Panic surged through me. What if they saw me like this? What if they thought I really was Rose? I pressed back against the wall, skirts rustling, veil trembling as I shook. The footsteps faded, passing my door. Relief washed over me, but it was fragile. At any moment, someone could knock, and I would have no choice but to answer. And I would have to do it as her. I couldn't stay still. My body wouldn't let me. I paced the suite in frantic circles, my hands trembling as they clutched at the folds of the skirt, the satin sliding through my fingers like it was alive. Every swish of fabric mocked me, the weight of the gown dragging behind in a perfect train, elegant where I was anything but. Each step betrayed me further. The heels clicked softly against the carpet, dainty, precise, forcing me into a rhythm I'd never chosen. My spine arched under the corset's demand, my shoulders drawn back into a bridal poise that felt cruelly natural. Even the way my arms moved, subtle flourishes of the wrist, the delicate way my fingers lifted the veil, none of it belonged to me. I turned toward the mirror, desperate to find Liam, to see some trace of myself, but Rose looked back. Her chestnut curls gleamed in the light, veil trailing over her shoulders, pearl choker gleaming at her throat. Her lips trembled, parted as though she might sob, but no sound came. Only her eyes betrayed the truth, my panic burning behind them.
No!
I whispered. The sound, her voice was too soft, too melodic.
No, I can't. This isn't me.
I pressed my palms flat against the mirror, leaning so close I could feel the faint coolness of the glass against my skin. But it was her skin I saw, smooth, flawless, glowing with the faintest flush of bridal color. My hands trembled as I lifted them, and the reflection showed slender, manicured fingers tipped with pale nails. Tears pricked hot at the corners of my eyes. I spun away, stumbling, the train of the dress tugging at my legs as though to remind me it was part of me now. My balance faltered, caught by the heels, and I had to steady myself against the wardrobe. The fabric of the gown rustled like laughter, mocking my clumsy attempts to fight it.
This isn't real.
I told the empty room, but my words fell like vows, too sweet, too final. The perfume still hung in the air, clinging to my hair, my veil, my skin. Every breath filled me with rose until I could barely separate myself from her anymore. I pressed myself back against the wall, sliding down until the gown pooled around me, spreading in perfect white arcs across the carpet. My breath came short and shallow. My body shivered. The pearls at my throat caught the light, proof of the transformation's finality. From somewhere down the corridor came laughter, feminine, light, careless. Bridesmaids, their voices carried, bright and cheerful, searing through my panic. My heart seized. They were here. They were arriving. And sooner or later, one of them would knock on this door. The room was silent, save for the faint rustle of the gown each time I shifted. My back pressed hard against the wall, the weight of the veil heavy over my shoulders, the pearls cool against my throat. I hardly recognized the trembling hands clasped at my chest. They were too delicate, too slender, too alien. I whispered to myself again, a desperate test.
I'm Liam. I'm still Liam.
But the sound was Rose's voice, sweet, feminine, unmistakably hers. Each syllable betrayed me. My chest heaved, panic clawing through me, and then it happened. A sharp knock at the door. I froze. My heart slammed so violently I thought the corset might crack. The knock came again, lighter this time, followed by a cheerful voice that made my blood run cold. Andrea!
Rose, it's me. Open up. I've brought the kit so we can start your makeup and hair. Come on, don't keep me waiting. We've only got a few hours until the ceremony. You know how Jacob is? He'll panic if we're late.
I'll be there in a moment.
I clapped my hand over my mouth, horrified at the sweetness, the femininity in the tone. It was flawless. It was her. Outside, Andrea hummed happily, satisfied by the answer. She shifted her bag of brushes and sprays, the faint clink of bottles carrying through the door. I stood frozen, veil trembling around me, the truth settling in with brutal clarity. There was no escape. To everyone beyond this door, I was Rose, and unless I played the part perfectly, my secret would unravel before the entire wedding. The knock came one final time, soft, expectant.